to Athletics for Life podcast. This is a show where we're trying to promote education-based athletics. And in today's show, we're going to be looking at the kettlebell and talking to someone who specializes in kettlebells. Jeff?
Yeah, we're very pumped about this episode because we're all about life skills, right, that sports give you. But kettlebell is something new, well, it's not new. It's been there a long time, but it's getting more known now. And we have a very special guest on our podcast. We will introduce him. We got Brett Jones on the podcast. He's the StrongFirst Director of Education and a Master Kettlebell Trainer. Brett Jones is a certified athletic trainer and strength and conditioning specialist based in Pittsburgh. Mr. Jones holds a Bachelor of Science in Sport Medicine from High Point University, a Master of Science in Rehabilitative Sciences from Clarion University of Pennsylvania, and he's a certified strength and conditioning specialist from the NSCA, which is the biggest strength and conditioning organization in the US. Brett is currently the Director of Education for StrongFirst and presenter and advisory board member for Functional Movement Systems.
With over 25 years of experience, Brett has sought out to consult with professional teams and athletes, as well as present through the United States and internationally. As an athletic trainer who has also transitioned into the fitness industry, he has taught kettlebell techniques and principles since 2003, so over 17 years of experience. Brett continues to evolve his approach to training and teaching and is passionate about improving the quality of education for the fitness industry. And it's really going to be a great interview with Brett. I'm excited. I know I use my kettlebell sometimes. It's not quite as big as Jeff's. But, it'll be great just to get some more information for myself and for the athletes.
Yeah, and Brett works for StrongFirst. If you go online, strongfirst.com, StrongFirst is the school of strength. They teach men, women, students to reach high level of strength quickly, safely, and without interfering with their duty, job, or sport. So it's all about those life skills and training for life.
Quote from Professor Leonid Matiev: "Strength is the foundation for developing the rest of physical qualities." So it's within that strength that we can develop the rest of ourselves, especially with sport, like the athletes that we work with, Jeff.
Yeah, and we're really looking into talking with Brett about the application of kettlebells for our programs, why multi-sport athletes should incorporate kettlebell training. Also, a lot of these gyms are very old school, CD, that the gyms that we have at our schools, it's always the bench press, it's the isolation movements. And the kettlebell is just a new training tool, which could really help our athletes.
Almost definitely. I think it'd be a great thing to implement. And as far as from getting equipment, it's just one piece of equipment rather than a bunch, Yeah,
and exactly in this quarantine time, and when people cannot go to gyms, and it's so simple to do. I know you've been doing a lot of kettlebells, CD. I've been incorporating kettlebells in my routines. It's fast, it's safe. You can do it at home, you can do it anywhere. I can drive anywhere, bring a kettlebell and get a good workout in. And I think our athletes, also coaches, athletic directors will really enjoy this podcast with Brett. And we'll go over to Brett and enjoy our podcast. We have Mr. Brett Jones on our podcast today. We will introduce ourselves to you, Mr. Jones, and then you can introduce yourself briefly, and then we get into it. We're very excited. This is the Athletics for Life podcast. My name is Jeff Copes, and I am the athletics director at the International School of Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. And my co-host, CD Johnson. CD?
I'm CD Johnson. I'm the athletic director and science teacher and year 7 maths teacher at the British School of Ulaanbaatar. Been in Mongolia for quite a while working with sport. Jeff and I started this show. Our goal is to kind of spread the message of education-based athletics, or using athletics as a tool to learn a lot of those lessons that you can't really learn anywhere else. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do with this show, and we're excited to have you on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Brett?
Absolutely. So, what can I say about me? Let's see. I have a background as an athletic trainer. So a Bachelor of Science, Sports Medicine, Athletic Training, Master's in Rehabilitative Sciences, which is actually drug and alcohol rehab, which is a little interesting tie-in with behavioral change and things of that nature for fitness folks. And took my first job at a small military academy in the metropolis of Chatham, Virginia, which just so happened to be Gray Cook's hometown. And so I ended up working with Gray Cook in my training room and his clinics for a couple of years, and then moved up into Pennsylvania, went to the second ever kettlebell certification that Pavel Satsulin taught in the United States in February of 2002, and then started teaching with Pavel in April of 2003. And then hooked back up with Gray, and I've been teaching FMS and with functional movement systems since 2006. So traveling and teaching with Pavel for the last 17 years, teaching with Gray for the last 14, director of education for StrongFirst. And yeah, that's the long story kept medium.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brett. Yeah, I remember I really got into kettlebells after seeing Pavel at the Joe Rogan Experience. I was already working with kettlebells, but he really changed my vision on that. And especially working with athletes at our schools, our student athletes, they play multiple sports throughout the year. I think the kettlebell is a great tool for them to implement into their training. So that's why
absolutely, absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about the StrongFirst philosophy on training, on the education of athletes?
Absolutely. So StrongFirst, we like to say our mission is to pursue, promote, and practice strength, because we believe strength has a greater purpose. And, part of that is this, lots of different ways to talk about it, but men's sauna and corporate sauna, if you want to talk about sound mind, sound body, and things of that nature, that strength is an expression of what's inside, and that takes many different forms, whether we're talking about the dancer or the power lifter or the football player or the gymnast. There's lots of different ways that strength is expressed, and but there can be some similar ways in the way that strength is built. And so kettlebell training in particular provides some very unique benefits to athletes and everybody else, as a matter of fact. And part of that reason is, it's a deceiving tool, right? It's a cannonball with a handle on it. And you look at it and you think, well, that's, what's a cannonball with a handle on it? What could be unique or, special about this? But actually that design, that thick handle, offset center of gravity, really makes it a unique tool. And one of the biggest things is this unique loaded eccentric position that we can get into in the swing, clean, snatch, things of that nature. And that unique loaded eccentric, I like to, as awesome as the barbell lifts are and Olympic lifts are, I like to joke, you can't swing a barbell between your legs. Well, more than once, and then you're going to decide that was a really bad idea. I don't think I should do that anymore. Yeah. And so, but the kettlebell allows us this opportunity to get into this loaded eccentric position. And I've been on a force plate with just doing a 2-arm swing with a 24-kilo bell and producing upwards of 3.5 times my body weight eccentric load in that hinge position. That's a great return on investment for moving around a 53-pound weight, yet to get 3.5 times my body weight load in that loaded eccentric position. And so that really, that's a unique thing. And if we boil down athletics to our ability to absorb and redirect force, that's what we're doing in the kettlebell swing, clean, snatch, jerk, all of those things. And then that offset center of mass, really up to a certain point, it will guide you into better positions. If we're talking about a military press and getting into overhead positions, that offset center of mass will literally guide you into better positions. Then you reach a point where that offset center of mass is far enough away that it becomes a great challenge and really produces some unique loading and some unique strengthening.
No, that's great. You definitely hit on my next question. Just getting into the benefits of kettlebells specifically for athletics. What have you trained any high school level athletes with kettlebells? Have you noticed anything with kind of younger kids or kind of kids in general, teenagers with kettlebells?
Absolutely. So, and go a couple different directions there, because when you're talking about training youth in particular, and when they're in those growing phases, and you say goodnight the day before, and they come back and they're 2 inches taller the next morning, that provides some unique challenges, and you get kind of the baby giraffe syndrome, where all of a sudden they grow 2 inches over a couple of months, and they've lost kind of some proprioceptive and kinesthetic control. And so being able to have a system of training in place that kind of constantly reorients them with controlling their body, so that when they're in those growth phases, they're constantly learning how to adapt to all of that new structure that's being built. And so an exercise like the getup allows, as Gray would describe it, it's alignment with integrity under load. And so constantly learning how to align your structure so that the weight settles through you to the ground, and coordinate your structure around that load really helps with some of those awkwardness of some of those growing phases. And then we have great just basic strengthening exercises like the get up, the press, the front squat. And then we get into the ballistics again. And now we're training power in a really safe manner that has a really steep learning curve. I can take somebody from 0 to swings in a really short period of time, where I might be going from, learning how to coordinate a barbell deadlift to knowing really how to perform a barbell clean, not power clean, but, the full squat clean. That can be a journey. Like that can be a long time. Yeah.
Very long time.
But I can put you on that ramp with a kettlebell very quickly. And so I think for power production, for the learning curve, things of that nature, it really turns out to be great for youth. And across, I've had I taught classes at one of the first kettlebell studios in the nation out in San Diego, California, a few years ago. And just don't let the baby face fool you. But I would have 75, 80-year-old grandmother doing deadlifts, standing beside a 24-year-old surfer doing heavy kettlebell swings, and everybody's in the same class and having fun. And so it really does span the generations.
Yeah, we should definitely get you over here to Mongolia, Brett. You would love it over here.
I was blown away when I started looking into it, and I'm like, that Mongolia, that's just got to be part of the web address. That can't be, they're not actually in Mongolia. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, they're actually in Mongolia. So it's fascinating. I would, once in post-COVID times, maybe that's a possibility. I'd love to have that chance.
Most definitely.
What I really love about the kettlebell is there's a great article on the StrongFirst website about the what the hell effect, and doing the swings and just doing those basic exercises. My running is getting better, and I can walk up to a deadlift and just pull the same way that I did before without almost no practice. Can you tell a little bit about what the hell effect, and then specifically towards athletics for our kids?
And it was interesting because early on, and so I go back into 2001, 2002 with Swinging Bells, and I've been a part of some online forums and kettlebell discussion groups since 2002. And early on, we just started getting this. I've been working on my swings, but my pull-ups went up. And I've been working on my presses, but like this other lift that has nothing to do with that went up. And to your point, my running got better. All of these things that were kind of not related to what you were doing with the kettlebell, they start to improve. And I know of one special operator who was he was in a remote location with just himself and a 24 kilo bell. And he was doing kind of the rite of passage program that Pavel has. And he came back into the States, and his bench had gone up, his pull-ups had gone up, all of these things that he had not been working on got better. And again, it's that unique loaded eccentric position. It's the way the kettlebell is more alive in your hands. And that gets back to that offset center of mass. When you pick up a dumbbell, when you pick up a barbell, that center of mass is going to be right with your hand. Whereas with the kettlebell, it can be 6-8 inches beyond your hand, rotating and moving into different positions. And so you end up getting loaded from all of these different vectors that really just has this tremendous carryover. And not to belabor the point, but that unique loaded eccentric position, there's a lot of magic there.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we like to promote on our show is multi-sport athletes and kind of that carryover from one sport to the next. And I think with kettlebells, you definitely see that, right? Just how training with something like a kettlebell would help you in volleyball, would help you in football, would help you in swimming. Kind of like
Absolutely.
Just training those different systems.
Definitely. And I think that when we talk about training athletes, and this turns out to be, a very common question is, well, what's your routine for volleyball players? What's your routine for basketball players? What's your routine for whatever the sport is? And, there's obviously within that sport, there's so much time that you need to have dedicated towards skill acquisition and practice in that sport. And you have to remember that there's a training effect and impact from that. And one of the studies that I can think back to many years ago is they were looking at the vertical leaps of female volleyball players versus female basketball players. And female volleyball players had a much higher vertical leap, whereas female basketball players did not have as high a vertical leap. And the reason turns out to be volleyball, because the net is attainable and you can spike and do things within that sport, you spend more time jumping. Since the net is unachievable and you just have to get high enough to get a rebound, you actually spend less time jumping within the basketball activities. And so, just that training effect and difference from the sport leads to overall higher vertical leaps within that sport. So you don't so much need a sport specific training routine, especially with youth. Youth are going to respond. I wish I was 18 to 24 years old again. I wasted a lot of time that could have been very productive. But with that age range where you're talking about that adolescent hormonal system that's going to respond to the training that you put them under. You can be a generalist in your strength conditioning program. You want to be a specialist in your sport and optimize that sport practice time. So leaving the general strength conditioning program as a general thing, and to your point about carryover, if I can do one thing and get 3 things to come along with it, I don't need to do the 3 other things. Like I'm just more time efficient. I can put more volume and work into that one thing that's getting me the 3 things. And so that's, with the proliferation of information and the ability to access it, everybody can pull down the latest, greatest training routine of whatever sports hero, is in their sport. And that is usually a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, Brett, you see that a lot. And we work in the international school circuit, right? They have these beautiful facilities. They get techno gym in to make a whole new fitness center. They have everything. And then the kids walk in and they have no clue what to do. They go to, and this is again a beautiful clip from the Joe Rogan Experience where Pavel talks about getting better at the leg extension. There's not a bang for your buck, right? So how would you What would you tell these international schools, these big, beautiful schools, about how to implement kettlebells in their strength and conditioning programs? How can they start?
So easiest thing to do, and so most anything you can do with a dumbbell, you can do with a kettlebell.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot you do with a kettlebell that is not the same with a dumbbell. And so if I was holding the purse strings and I was determining purchasing, I would want one thing that got me two or three things. And so I would look at kettlebells as a very easy to implement tool because I can use them for so many other things. And this can be one of the hurdles as you bring something new in. People don't know quite what to do with it. So when I would work with new people, I would typically make sure that I was using the kettlebell in very familiar exercises. One arm rows, single leg deadlift, farmer's carry, all of these things that are, obviously we can do any of those with a dumbbell. So you just swap it out. It's just, you get the kettlebell involved in those exercises. And then you start introducing things like the kettlebell deadlift into the swing. And so now it's not some new foreign, object. They've been using it. It's they do it for their farmers carries. They do it for this. They do it for that. And so now you ask them to do something which is pretty unique, like the swing, and it's more easily adapted into. That's if you want to tiptoe. If you don't want to tiptoe, then you're going to implement kettlebell training into. It can be part of your strength training routine with things like the get up, the military press, the front squat, and double bell front squat is very unique. We had a famous, very successful power lifter who had a squat of over 1,000 pounds at the time, but 2 40-kilo kettlebells were enough for him on his double kettlebell front squat. So again, that's a huge return on investment to where the actual load I'm carrying is way less than $1,000, but it has this great carryover and great impact. So you get it into your strength practice, and then you use this as part of your power training and your conditioning, because as we manipulate different work rest ratios, we really accomplish some really great conditioning. But then again, now we've got the strength and conditioning coach has to be working with the sport coach. What's that sport coach got planned for conditioning out on the field? If they're already running a bunch of sprints, I don't necessarily need to replicate that in the gym. Mm-hmm. And so now I can manipulate my training around that conversation between sports coach and strength conditioning coach. I think I went all over the place there, but hopefully that there was an answer.
No, because it's funny because I make a budget for my school, right? And then I go with this kettlebell, and like this one is 16 kilos, and it's about $60, I think. And then they're like, yeah, why would you pay $60 for a ball and with a handle on it? I'm like, but you just invested $1,000 into a machine that doesn't even do anything for the kids. So that's very interesting sometimes. So
definitely. Yeah. Budget conversations are always an interesting conversation. And like I said, if you can start swapping out materials, so to speak, and one thing gets you three, that usually goes over better from a budget perspective. And I really believe kettlebells are that tool.
Yeah. What would you say for students? You kind of mentioned how to start, but I know you've mentioned them and I'm familiar with them, but just for anyone who's maybe new and not as familiar with kettlebells, what are some of the most important exercises for athletes and beginning athletes to get a handle of and get a grip on?
Absolutely.
What are some of the core kettlebell exercises?
Yeah, I'm pretty traditional and pretty simple. I'm going to start you with swings and get-ups. And between those two things, I have something, and you guys have seen this in the youth and people that you coach, and especially we talked about those growth phases. Stability work becomes very important because they're constantly having to relearn how to control their body in space because it's continually expanding. Of course, in my case, that ended at a certain point. I ended up at a towering 5'9", but the get up really is one of those great stability exercises. Whether we're talking about the midsection, whether we're talking about the shoulder, and coordinating, like I said, aligning the body under that load. I think it teaches a lot. It can be a little intimidating to look at first, but if we just focus on the first couple of steps, we still get a lot of that great stability and midsection training in there, but without having to coordinate the entire movement. We can build that over time. And then one of the most fundamental things we do, whether we're talking about athletics in terms of a vertical leap or broad jump, we want that great athletic hinge. That athletic hinge sets the foundation for so many other things that we're going to do not only in the gym, but on the field or court or whatever your sport. So that athletic hinge is one that we really want to be good at. And the unique thing about the kettlebell, especially as I start you into something like a kettlebell deadlift, I can put my center of mass over top of the kettlebell center of mass. And the closer I align those two centers of mass, the safer it is, the more efficient it is. That's one of the challenging things about the barbell, right? You're never going to get it lined up with your center of mass if we're talking about a deadlift, because the bar's in front of you and, well, your shins are in the way. And so the bar is always going to be out there a little bit. So, but now with the kettlebell, and I've got one behind me, I can start to demonstrate this and kind of show you some of the positions. But, I get my centers of mass lined up, and that starts me on a very safe journey to kind of mastering this athletic hinge. Then I turn that into a power drill and a swing, and I'm still trying to coordinate my two centers of mass. I'm trying to make sure that the center of mass of the bell is not pulling me out of position at any point, and knowing how to reacquire that center of mass, absorb that force, and redirect it in a powerful manner. Did I just describe athletics?
Yeah, I think so. Right? Yeah.
I mean, that's it. So, the athletic hinge that we're shooting for, as I, kind of position with the kettlebell, a lot of people will start to deadlift from a position like this, but you can see the gap here, and you can see how far in front of me that bell is. So every little bit that bell's in front of me, that's a lot of increased load on the lumbar, and it really has an impact. So if I step over top of that bell, and now I perform my hinge, now I've got my center of mass over that center of mass, and the deadlift, this athletic hinge, happens in a very efficient and safe fashion. One of the hinges that's become very popular is, and I don't know why, but this became very popular. It's that more stiff-legged RDL style of hinge. And I'm not hating on the kind of RDL type of deadlift. If you need to target your hamstrings, it can be great. But when we're talking about the kettlebell deadlift and swing, my question to people is always this: does anybody vertical leap like this? Like, nope. Nobody vertical leaps like that, right? Well, if they do, they don't go very high, right? Yeah. And they're usually jumping backwards. So if I'm going to vertical leap, I am going to sit and explode. And so having that hinge and pop, that athletic hinge, shoulder above hip, hip above knee, allows me, and a little bit of shin angle. Athletically, if you're not creating that shin angle, you're not going to be very fast, and you're not going to jump very high. And so a little bit of shin angle is not a bad thing. So it starts to have that great transfer and carryover because of the positions that I'm training and the way I can coordinate this, my center of mass and that center of mass.
So with the swing, when our students want to start with it, or our players, how many swings should they do? What kind of way should they start with? Can you tell us a little bit about that? How to start with it?
So I'm always going to start with the kettlebell deadlift. And so that sets my foundation. That is my slow motion opportunity to perfect the hip hinge that I am then going to load in that ballistic and over speed eccentric manner. So if I don't have a good foundation there, it's probably not going to get better under speed and load, right? So if I can't control it slowly, and that, from an athletic standpoint, we sometimes get into those conversations. Well, I don't want my athletes to do anything slow because then they'll be slow. And it's just not true. Martial arts have been practicing katas for a few thousand years, and they're not slow, but they perfect the patterns in this slow motion kata standpoint, and then they add speed and power to those established patterns. So having that great hinge, that great deadlift, that's step one. So if I want you swinging a 16 kilo bell, I want you confidently deadlifting for upwards of 10 reps, a 32 kilo bell. So if you can deadlift that 32 kilo bell for upwards of 10 reps, now I feel more confident having you come back to the 16 and perform 5 good swings. And that's, as far as rep ranges and things like that go, I'm a huge fan. If we're talking ballistics, it's 5 to 10 reps in a set. If we're talking grinds or strength activity like a military press or something like that, I'm 5, maybe 6 reps and under.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm going to stay very much. And that doesn't mean I'm lifting at 90+%. It means that I'm choosing a weight that I could do 7 or 8 reps with, but I stop at 5.
Yeah.
And so the pull-ups are a great example of this, because a lot of athletes will and pull-ups are another fantastic activity. Like you take something as simple as a good solid kettlebell routine and add some pull-ups, because your ability to use your lats and connect your lats into most everything that you do really helps athletically. Lat becomes thoracolumbar fascia becomes glute. So just from the standpoint of running, being able to tie the lats in to creating that stable base for the glutes to be able to push the way they need to is incredibly important. So lats are a really important muscle, and we actually start incorporating that right away within our kettlebell deadlift. And so we'll talk about that here in a minute. And then that made me lose my train of thought there for a second. So I was on a roll, and then I saw something shiny, and then I went in that direction. So I'll come back in just a minute. But we're going to keep that rep range 5 to 10 on ballistics, 5 and under on grinds. And like I said, it doesn't mean I'm lifting at 90%. And when you look at some of the most successful training routines that have ever been implemented, primarily the Russian Olympic lifting programs, most of their training was centered around 70%, 1 RM. Yeah. Pull-ups. So let's say I have a max of 8 pull-ups. So I go in the gym and I do my 8 pull-ups, max set. How many am I going to get on the second set?
3.
Maybe 6.
4. 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5. What am I going to get on the third set? 2.
I normally go up in numbers, but no, not kidding.
Exactly. You might be different, Joe, but you're going to accumulate a very low volume. There we've accumulated maybe 15 reps, right? Well, for that person who can do a max set of 8, how many sets of 3 could you go in and do? How many sets of 3 or 4 could you go in and do? Like, you could realistically get upwards of 10 sets of 3 or 4 reps with enough rest in between sets. Something else I'll talk about here in a minute. So I don't always have to push to the max in order to really get some great strengthening. And so working within that ballpark 70% effort range when we're talking about our grinds, not forever. We're going to visit the high end, and we're going to visit underneath that as part of our warm up and things like that. But most of our work sets are going to be accomplished in the 70-80% range. That allows me to accumulate volume. It allows me, it's heavy enough to get great skill, and it really moves me forward in my strength practice. And just real quick on rest. Rest is probably the most abused training variable in the world. We just don't want to rest. We want to do one set and the next and the next and the next, and we want the burn. We want that hard work. When you look at elite sprinters, an elite sprinter will run, one sprint and then rest 15 minutes or more before they run another sprint. it's not 1-to-1 work to rest ratio, right? They're not running a sprint, resting 15 seconds, running another sprint. It's run a sprint, rest, recover, stretch, do some unrelated drills. 15 minutes later, you're ready to run your next sprint. And so I'm not saying wait 15 minutes between sets of kettlebell swings, but you want to rest long enough to be recovered.
Yeah.
And so that a different mindset than most, especially young folks, will bring to the gym, because they want to go in, they want to get crushed, they want to work hard, they want that burn and that sweat. There's a better way to do it.
So you would go from the deadlift to a swing, and next to that, the swing. And we have to talk about the get up, because I think that's the best exercise. Actually, it humbles you. You know,
Yes.
I was a big bench presser, and I was always about that ego lifting, right? Go to the gym, and just going on a get up is it's humbling. And I think that's just a great exercise. Could you show us first a little bit about the swing? So when our student athletes want to incorporate that, how to do it properly? Because I think that's
Sure.
super exercise.
So just kind of quickly, going back to the deadlift, you're going to connect the lats into the deadlift by having this little anti-shrug of the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not retraction and the big chest. It's actually just sinking the armpits. Sit into that hinge, sniff into that braced belly, push through the ground, come to the top, sniff back in, keep those arms against the ribs, set that belt down. Once you can do that confidently, now we're going to step about a foot width behind the bell. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see, is people go way behind the bell and then they reach forward. And now you look at that distance that I have to cover and make up with my back. I want to be maybe a foot width or less behind the bell, sit into my hinge, then grab the bell. Now I'm ready to swing. And notice, like, I can close my eyes, and trust me, my eyes are closed, okay? So I hinge, I reach, and I don't even have to have my eyes open. I'm so precise in my setup. Your setup is your first rep. So a lot of people wait till the bell is off the ground. Your first rep is in your setup. So once I've got my setup, my hinge, the bell, now that sniff into the braced belly, I'm going to hike to connect the arms to the ribs, extend the bell, the hips will blast the arms off of my chest. I will wait for the arms to reconnect and then sit into my next hinge. What we don't want to do is hinge early.
Yeah.
Look at the gap. Anytime I'm creating gaps, that's a problem, right? So a good swing is going to look something like and the set's not over until I've parked it safely. First rep is your setup. Last rep is how you set it down.
Yeah.
And then
yeah, the kettlebell is such a humbling tool, man. It's it's that, and you were talking about the breaks in between sets. If I do my swings, I got a 32 kilos at home. I got two, the 70 pounders. And I'm getting better now. But if I do the swings, right, I have to recover. I have to sit down, because actually my heart is pumping in my chest. And I never had that before.
So one of the things we want to do between sets are kind of fast and loose drills, where we're kind of shaking the body off. And so when we generate power and tension, we actually restrict blood flow. Yeah. So we want to encourage that blood flow to come back into those areas that have had that tension. So fast and loose drills, kind of vibration and shaking drills. You want to rest long enough to be able to pass the talk test. Like right now, I'm able to converse with you in a pretty normal fashion, taking a little breath in between sentences and not having to pause during my sentences to catch my breath. So I'm ready for my next set. So that sort of metric where, and if you're honest about it, and I've made that mistake of pushing myself a little.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can pass the talk test. I'm ready to go. No, you're not. Rest long enough to be able to pass the talk test, then do your next set. And so for years, I held myself to the clock very tightly, where I would specific work rest ratios, right? I was going to do a set every so many seconds. My training is so much better now that I've freed myself from the clock and I allow myself time to rest. And so it makes a huge, huge difference. Notice one thing I want to highlight on the swings that I was doing there. Did you note the float? How long I was in the top position and how long the bell was floating at the top. It's your only chance to rest during the swing. Don't waste the float. So that is an expression of power where I literally blast it. I let it enjoy that weightless moment, and I have myself on the force plate, and the force plate flatlines during my float.
Oh, yeah.
So there's nothing happening.
Awesome.
And then you reconnect, and that rapid athletic hinge, over speed eccentric, absorbing and redirecting that force.
Yeah,
awesome.
it's actually that calm on top. I have sometimes when I can almost let go of the bell, right? And it's that same moment when you go up for a spike, you can actually float, and then you have that moment, that split second, right? Yeah, interesting.
Absolutely, same thing. And we want to express that ballistic power, enjoy the results of that, wait for the reconnect, boom, and reproduce it. So for the get up, I think making sure that somebody has the pattern is what's most important first. We never want to load the get up until somebody knows all the steps, and all the steps so confidently that they could do something like balance a shoe on their fist and perform the get up without dropping the shoe. And that all that does is make sure that they know every step and they have smooth transitions. If we've ever been in the car with somebody who's learning how to drive a stick, then you know that can be a pretty disturbing experience where you're getting jerked back and forth as they're grinding the gears and trying to make everything work. But get in the car with like a Formula One race car driver. You're not even going to feel the gears shift. You just go faster. And that's the type of skill that we want within an exercise like the get up. And so for our get up, we call this the sweat angel. So establish 45-degree angles. If the arm is up, the leg is up. This palm is thumb up or palm up. I prefer thumb up. I'm going to push through this heel, get to the elbow, transition to the hand, sweep the leg, note the little hip hinge, get straight. I'm going to step that foot over, drive up, step back, step open. There's that hip hinge again. Looks like I'm overextended, but not when I put my weight back on it. Have a seat to the elbow, push away to the back. So when you show somebody that for the first time, their response is, there's too many steps. I'm never going to remember it all. And just have them go through it like a kata. To the elbow, to the hand, sweep the leg. Just break it down step by step by step by step. Don't overwhelm them with instructions. You can always drop a little correction as you go. But if you start by saying, boy, we're getting ready to do this thing called a get up, and it's really complicated. There's so many steps. It's really tough, but it's a great exercise. Yeah, you lost them at this is really tough and complicated, and you're gonna struggle to get this.
Mm.
So just get them to go through it, click, 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 add that shoe, make sure they're confident, and then spot them for their first attempt and make sure they're confident in doing the get up. And remember, if all they ever do is the first 2 steps of the get up, still getting tremendous benefit from doing the get up.
CD?
No, that was great. My get-ups look nothing as structured as yours, Brett. Mine is just literally wrestling with the weight above my head as I'm standing up. So even for me, that was a perfect instruction. Definitely something I'll be going back to again and again, just to make my get-ups better.
All those smooth transitions, yoga, we get a little focused on what's happening while we're holding the pose, but the transition between poses is also something that a skilled practitioner will be very good at, and they make it look very pretty. When I'm doing a swing, when I'm doing a get up, I want athletic, crisp, dare I say beautiful, to be associated with what I'm doing. Because what do the world's best athletes do? They make it look easy.
Right.
Right. So
would you say, Brett, for our athletes, coaches, like a good swing, like a deadlift, and then a good swing, a get up, and then, like you say, pull-ups and push-ups, that could be a really good base for our athletes to work with, right?
Definitely. And I would also throw in there something like the single leg deadlift and the goblet squat.
Okay.
Just to kind of round things out. Most of athletics is single legged. So being good at something like a single leg deadlift, rear foot elevated, split squat, previously known as the Bulgarian split squat. But those sort of single leg activities, very, very important. The goblet squat, just for opening up the hips and maintaining the squatting pattern. That symmetrical stance pattern, as important as single leg work is, that symmetrical stance pattern is where we produce a lot of force, whether we're jumping vertically or ahead. It's where we absorb force, whether we're talking about landing from a jump or taking on the load from another athlete. So that symmetrical stance pattern is very important. So the goblet squat is something that I would certainly have in there.
Could you just show us the goblet squats as a quickly? Because now we're here. That would be great.
Yeah. That's why I set the camera so I could demonstrate. I'll do like 1 or 2 from the side, and then I'll do 1 or 2 from the front.
Great.
So we're gonna pop this up into the goblet position. Sniff some air in. Pull myself into the hole till my elbows hit my knees. Sink in, gather myself.
Great.
Not bad for first thing in the morning.
Exactly. It looked really good. So, yeah, go, Brett, go. Yeah.
Yeah, getting the elbow to hit the VM or the teardrop muscle just above and inside the knee, that gives you that opportunity to pry, open up those hips, which really is the magic in the goblet squat. You don't have to squat as deeply as I did on the first go round. Build that over time.
Most of our kids, Brett, they play all 3 sports. So our seasons are like volleyball, and then we play basketball, soccer. We have a swimming program. I'm actually working with a student now, a Mongolian girl at our school. She's training to go to West Point to represent her country over there. Awesome. What would you tell these kids to buy kind of a kettlebell, or what kind of weight, how to start?
So this is like Goldilocks, right? And I know that's a fairy tale that doesn't exist in all countries, but basically it's too hot, too cold, just right, right? So you do want to end up with a weight that can fit many roles.
Mm-hmm.
Now she has the benefit of working with you, so you're going to be able to kind of work with her and find that weight. I will say that erring on the lighter side as far as kettlebells are concerned, usually the better direction. If you go a little heavy, you're going to be fairly limited to kind of deadlifts, 2-arm swings, maybe some farmer's carries, something like that early on. So for most females, I'm going to say somewhere between the 12 and 16 kilo bell is going to be a good starting point. For most guys or most males, you're going to be looking at somewhere between the 16 to 24 kilo as a good starting weight. That bell that I've been using this morning is a 24 kilo bell. It's actually 19 years old and still looks in pretty good shape. So these can be basically forever pieces of equipment if they're quality bells. Another selling point for the people with the purse strings. So yeah, that was my first bell, and I'm still using it. Like I probably train with 24 kilo bell 2 to 4 days a week.
Oh, wow.
CD?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Man, as a science teacher, we could just go on forever talking about center of mass and absorbing the force, redirecting the force. I love it. But this interview has been great, Brett. It definitely ties in well with our podcast and just giving back to the kids, giving back to the athletes, giving them tools to kind of reach their potential. A quote that I always liked was kind of characters who you are when no one's looking. And with the shutdowns, coronavirus, everything, I think working with a kettlebell is a great way to get an exercise in at home and get that training in at home for those kids who have that strong character, who want to stay in shape, who are determined to do well when they have the ability to play sports and to get on the field again. So this has just been great, and I think our kids will get a lot out of it.
Awesome. Yeah, 1 to 3 kettlebells, I have a hard time thinking what you can't accomplish. It's a tremendous home training tool. It is that little piece of the puzzle that can really move somebody ahead when they're in limited resources and situations where you are forced to train at home. And that athletic hinge, that eccentric, tremendous carryover to when you come back to everything else.
Yeah, Brett, we will definitely stay in contact because there's loads of more to talk about. But if our students or coaches have more questions or they want to learn more about kettlebells, where can they find you? Or
StrongFirst? Yeah, StrongFirst.com is the best place to go. Lots of articles and resources on the site. I have several articles on there, actually like 58, but who's counting?
Who's counting?
Who's counting? Yeah, lots of resources and information there. We have a very active community forum where people can ask questions and get assistance. And yeah, that's definitely a great resource.
Thanks a lot, Brett. This has been a great talk. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be on, speak to you and your audience, and look forward to future opportunities.
We will.
For sure.
We will. Thank you so much, Brett. We wish you a very good day over there, and it's time to go to bed for us. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. You guys have a great sleep, and enjoy the rest and tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Bye-bye, Brett. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, we just interviewed Brett Jones. It was awesome. Yeah. He's so full of knowledge. I feel like we could have probably talked for another couple hours. just about, I almost felt a little selfish for how much I was getting out of it with Turkish get-ups, and just I've picked up a few things how I can improve my swing technique. No, I think that's going to be great for our kids that are looking for something to do at home to stay in shape, because they know season's going to be just around the corner.
Yeah, and the kettlebells, they connect so well with the philosophy that we always preach, right? It's always about longevity, life skills. I always talk about the kids about dropping the ego, right? And that's what kettlebells do. They lower your ego because they're so humbling and they're so tough to work with. So if you want more information, we're going to put all the links in the description, how to find Brett, how to find StrongFirst. And we would encourage every student athlete to get a kettlebell.
Most definitely. And for anyone else, if you want to keep up with us, subscribe, hit a like, so that way as we have more guests like Brett with great information, you won't miss out.
Yeah, that's it. Awesome. Bye-bye.
All right. Great podcast, Brett.